Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy-Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I am a learner of wine, and we hope that you'll continue learning and sipping along with us. Welcome, everyone, to Wines We Drink, a podcast we call our summer fun project. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy-Varnum, and I'm joined in our fun exploration of wine by my friend and co-host Keith Herndon, who is also our certified wine sommelier.
Hello again, Charlotte, and a big shout out to our fabulous audience. We're recording today's episode in my wine kitchen, and it's great to have you joining us from wherever you're listening.
Home sweet home. So for all of you joining us today, you found us as we're about to jump into our 9th episode of season 3. Keith has brought so many great selections to the show this summer, including last week's fantastic Cabernet Sauvignon Syrah blend. What an amazing wine treat that was. I loved it. So if you missed last week's show or any other episodes from this season or our first 2 seasons, you can find us on all of the major podcast platforms. Also, you can visit wineswedrink.com, where you'll find a complete guide to all of our episodes.
Charlotte, today we're continuing this season's foray into red wines, and we're featuring a bottle of my favorite Italian red varietal, Sangiovese.
You know, now that you mentioned Sangiovese, I'll also add that this is one of my favorite red wines. It's got some acid to it for a red. It's not typically overly tannic. It's fun to say. I think it's a really versatile wine to pair with a lot of different foods.
Sangiovese. Yeah,
Sangiovese.
That's fun to say. Now, who's supposed to be the wine expert on the show? I mean, that was some really good.
Okay,
that was some
fair.
really good description there of a Sangiovese. But seriously, though, you make some good points about this wine. It's definitely a food pairing wine. Wine Folly describes Sangiovese as a sensitive grape that takes on different stylistics, expressions based on where it grows. Most of our listeners are probably thinking we're about to present a wine from the Italian countryside, probably from the Chianti region. After all, that's the most famous region in the world for producing Sangiovese, and I do love many wonderful Chiantis. But honestly, I wanted to shake up our thinking about this grape a bit. Why go to Chianti when we can taste a delicious example from an emerging California wine region, the Sierra Foothills?
Why indeed? You are always throwing me and our audience a curveball. It's going to be interesting to learn about this area and to sample the bottle that you've selected today.
Well, my wife and I have been traveling to the Sierra Foothills for years. I mean, a lot of times when we go to Napa or Sonoma, we always kind of add on a trip up into the Sierra Foothills. And when you go there, everything is the laid back vibe. You get that in the wineries and their tasting rooms. It's a far cry from what I would call the more polished scene of Napa and Sonoma. I love those experiences, don't get me wrong. I mean, Napa is my happy place. But sometimes it's just good to have a more low-key experience.
I can understand that, and I can understand why you might have visited there once to try it, but what keeps you going back?
Well, in the spirit of full disclosure, we have some family in the area.
Okay.
But even so, that doesn't require us to go out and drink wine. We keep drinking the wine in the Sierra Foothills because it's really good. And we found so many wineries there who take viticulture and winemaking very seriously. It's their passion. It's their lifestyle. Many of these are small family operations. They're artisans, and I'm just attracted to that approach. When I was preparing my selections for this season and looking back over the previous seasons, I was just surprised that I hadn't already featured a wine from the Sierra Foothills.
Okay, well, we're going to rectify that today. So can you tell us about your selection?
Well, the Sierra Foothills is a vast area that lies east of Sacramento and southwest of Lake Tahoe. It's a pretty big area, as I called it, vast. It encompasses 8 counties, but Amador and El Dorado counties are the most well-known in that AVA. When I started counting up the wineries in the region, I was surprised to discover that there are over 100.
Wow.
I haven't been to all of those, I will just fully admit. But from the dozens that we have visited, there's one that we always go back to, Via Romano. I'll get into more of this winery's background in a moment, but it is a relative newcomer. It only opened in 2017. It specializes in Italian varietals that are really suited for this area. And so I really wanted to highlight the Sangiovese from Via Romano today.
Italian varietals in the Sierra foothills, should we find that unusual at all?
Well, I find it interesting how climates and terroir of one area can be so similar in another. Like Italy's Tuscany, the Sierra foothills generally enjoy warm days and cool nights. There are enough similarities that it's not at all surprising that the varietals that we associate with Italy also thrive in the Sierra foothills.
Okay, so are you then ready to go ahead and open today's selection?
Well, actually, I've already opened today's selection. It's here on the counter in the decanter. I felt like this little Sangiovese just needed a little bit of time. So before we started recording today's episode, I opened it and put it in the decanter for a bit. So I'm going to pour you a glass. So as I pour from the decanter into the glass, kind of give our audience a sense of what you're seeing there.
Okay. Well, as you're pouring, it's not a vibrant red. It's almost like an orangish or a light red, but not pink, light red.
Okay, yeah. I think that it's a typical color of a Sangiovese, right? Okay. I'd say it's a little off from, say, a cherry-hued Pinot Noir, but I've always thought of Sangiovese as having a noble color, not bright, but still very appealing to the eye. Mm-hmm. So now let's go in and have that first smell.
Okay. Well, and it may not have the Pinot Noir color, but there's definitely a familiar cherry aroma happening, and that's kind of followed up by some spice.
Yeah, the spicy notes this gives us a really pleasing sensation. My nose is loving that, right? Mm-hmm. I would probably go with describing the spice note as nutmeg or allspice, but in preparing these notes, I found that the official wine notes refer to this spice note as cardamom. Now, let's go in for that first taste. I see you've already beat me to it.
Okay. Yeah, don't mind if I do.
Right.
Yeah, that is wonderful. The mouthfeel is wonderful. And in flavor, it's more plummy, I would say.
Yeah, there's some definite, plum, I think is a great way to describe this wine. There's some weight to it. It's got some mouthfeel. Those red fruits are still on the palate. I'm still getting that faint cherry, but let me try that again. I'm going to have just one more taste. Mm-hmm. There's definitely some hints of strawberry along with the cherry there. I just think there's that red berryness is hidden in there, right?
We've said on this podcast that you can't always judge a wine by its first sip. You have to take multiple sips to really kind of unfold all the different layers there. So I've been sipping while you've been talking about what you're tasting, and there's some very interesting layers to this wine. Once you get past the fruit, there's some vanilla. There's some, earthy, what I'll call general earthiness flavoring through.
The winery's tasting notes, calls out tobacco as one of its highlighted flavors, and that may be what you were referring to there as earthy. I don't know. I mean, tobacco and earth are not necessarily the same, but there's that savory kind of umami quality to this. What do you think about the acidity and the tannins in this wine? Are they fighting each other, or are they complementary?
Yeah, I don't think they're fighting at all. I mean, this strikes me as having a very even finish. There's definitely acidity there, and a slight drying sensation from the tannins, but I really don't think that they're distracting from one another. It just creates a good, juicy sip.
You nailed it. I mean, this is a balanced finish to this wine, and let me interject here that this wine has some robust alcohol. It's label listed as 14.7% alcohol by volume, but that balanced finish, there's some nice acidity. The medium tannins are working together, so you just don't get that alcohol bite, even though it is at 14.7%. So all in all, I think this is a wine that's definitely made to pair with food.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, some drinkers may see that alcohol by volume and expect the bite, like you called it. But in my opinion, you really don't have to worry about that. But anyway, I'm distracted because you said food. So what goes with this wine?
Well, as you know, I like to start talking about food and wine pairings. I like to start with a cheese pairing, right? So for this wine, go with a nice hard cheese. I'm going to recommend some good salty Parmesan. That will work with the acid and the texture of the cheese and the mouthfeel of the wine. It's just going to make for an excellent wine and cheese pairing.
Mm-hmm. That
right?
sounds like a great suggestion. So moving on to the main course, then, what would you suggest?
The pairing suggested by the winery calls for a lamb ragu with ricotta and mint. Now that sounds delicious. Okay, I'm not gonna deny that that the wine notes probably got that right, but I'm going to bring it back to my own personal experience with this winery. The owners, John Tuning and his wife Leanne, they've created a wonderful party atmosphere at their winery, and they often have live entertainment and pizza nights. My wife and I have enjoyed more than a few summer evenings. They're enjoying a pizza from their pizza oven and a bottle of their Sangiovese. It has been the absolute highlight of many of our trips to the Sierra foothills. So while I can't do Via Romano's pizza oven justice, I have placed a slice of margarita pizza there for you to try with this wine.
Oh man, this looks wonderful. I'm of the mindset that pizza goes with everything, but let's try a bite. Try this out. And a sip of the wine. Oh wow. The tomato sauce is so bright and juicy, but then this wine cuts right through that in a terrific symphony. The little spice on the pizza too, and the spice notes in the wine, they're coming together so nicely. That's a great pairing.
Yes, I thought so. A Sangiovese of this quality holds up well with food, and it's a natural pairing with a tomatoey and cheesy slice of pizza.
I would agree. I think it's a natural harmony that gets created there. So a really, really great selection. And speaking of the quality that you were talking about earlier, how much will this bottle cost our listeners for that quality?
Well, this is a small production winery. So listeners, you will need to order wines from Via Romano directly from their website at vrv.vin. Or at the winery itself, if you happen to be visiting the Sierra foothills or live in that area. I ordered this bottle for $38, and that is a very competitive price for a boutique wine like this. And this is truly a boutique winery.
Okay, yeah, so it feels a little bit more exclusive, a little bit more limited edition. I see that there is a brief story about Via Romano's background on the bottle. On the back of the label there. So could you recap that? Do you have that?
Yeah, sure. The label explains that Leanne's great-grandfather, Tommaso Romano, immigrated from Naples, Italy in 1905, bringing his wine skills with him. And this heritage is very important to her. She and John were married in Italy, and they returned home with plans to launch their own vineyard on their family's land in the El Dorado County. It was their way of paying homage to Leanne's Italian heritage. As the label states, quote, John and Leanne came to this place in their life by the way of, or via, the Romano family name and decided to name their winery Via Romano Vineyards.
I like that. Another really great family wine story. I think that is so special. And speaking of special, I believe you have a special treat in store for our listeners for the finished portion of our program today.
Yes, when we come back from break, I'll be joined by John and Leanne, the proprietor themselves, to talk about this Sangiovese and others in their portfolio and a little about their overall wine journey.
I'm so excited. Don't go far, listeners. Meanwhile, I'm going to be treating myself to another slice of pizza, more of the Sangiovese. We will be right back. Welcome back to Wines We Drink. This is the portion of the show we call The Finish, and today Keith is talking with the husband and wife team, John Tuning and Leanne Davis, who together own Via Romano. Let's join Keith's conversation with them.
Well, thanks, Charlotte. I appreciate you kicking this over to this interview. Man, we are thrilled to have with us not one, but two guests, John and Leanne, who were the proprietors and winemakers and promoters of the Via Romano winery out in the Sierra foothills, El Dorado County. But we are recording their interview today while they are actually in Italy. So, John and Leanne, say hello to us from Italy.
Hi, guys.
Hi there.
How you doing?
Hey.
Ciao.
Yeah, ciao. Right. So we're going to start with that. I mean, the connection that John and Leanne have with Italy, we've talked about on the show already, but we're going to ask them in their own words. I mean, what is this connection with Italy, and how do you try to maintain that connection in the wines that you make and present to your customers?
Well, this whole thing started, basically it's through Leanne's heritage. She has Italian heritage. Her great-grandfather came from around Naples, and her great-grandmother came from, what's the name
Sicily.
of it? Sicily. Which I can't
Town of Brucoli.
Yeah, Brucoli. And so we actually started going to Italy back when, just after we met, and we had gone subsequent times after that, and then we decided to get married in Montepulciano, and that really kind of set us on the course. We got married in the town of Montepulciano, and then we honeymooned in Barolo, which is a world-renowned wine growing region, as that's where they grow a lot of Nebbiolo there, as well as Barbera, Dolcetto, etc. As far as getting to where we are as starting the winery, I had been working for a newspaper company for 29 years, and I got laid off in 2015. And so, I was struggling as to what I was going to do, because, I was 55 years old at the time, and it's difficult kind of finding a new career, a new profession at that age. So Leanne popped up with a suggestion. Well, you make wine. Why don't we start a winery? Just like that, as one does.
Yes.
So Leanne, what made you think that you had the what it takes to be winemakers?
So when we got married and we came home from our honeymoon, we brought a case of Nebbiolo to my mother, and she gave us an acre of land to grow Nebbiolo, which is the hardest grape to grow. And we decided to do it, and we jumped in like feet first to be farmers only. And I remember saying the day we planted our vineyard, I said, we will never open a winery. And famous last words.
So what changed? I mean, why did you decide to become winemaker?
He got laid off of his job, and I was doing a project. I was an interior designer and did a huge Sutter project. So I told John, I said, go work at a winery and learn how to make wine. Just go be a winemaker. And so he did. He went to work for a friend of ours and loved it so much. As soon as he started working there, that friend then went to Italy and left John to do everything by himself, which he loved. And he would come home and just be beaming with like such joy and pleasure of what he was doing. I'm like, you have to do this for love, and let's figure it out. So we figured it out, and we talked to a dear friend of ours who owns a winery, and asked him if it was possible, and he said yes, and he would help us. And that's what got started, and we opened our doors in 2017.
Yeah, I think that in 2017, not long after you opened, was the first time that my wife and I visited your winery, and
yeah, I believe that's right.
And been fans ever since, right?
Yeah.
Turning it back to the wine, Charlotte and I have been drinking your 29 Sangiovese on today's show. That's been our featured bottle for today's episode, and I just want to ask you, from the perspective of winemakers, why do you think this Sangiovese that you grow and produce there in the Sierra foothills is a good example of a Sangiovese varietal? Right?
Yeah, that's so Sangiovese is fairly ubiquitous here in Italy. I mean, it's grown all over the country, but in Tuscany, it's especially famous. Sangiovese has always been one of our favorite wines. It's the the Sangiovese that we've gotten from several vineyards over the year, but starting in 2018, we started getting it from Matagrano vineyards in Lotus. And to me, the wines that come from that fruit are just spectacular. He grows two separate clones of Sangiovese. One's the Sangiovese Grosso, and then the other one's the Brunello. And the Brunello is the one we used for our 2018 vintage, and the 2019 vintage was the regular Sangiovese, which is typically tends to be a little bit lighter than the Brunello. They both can be aged, for quite a while, and I think they both take on their own characteristics. But his particular vineyard is right on the American River, and he irrigates from the American River on that plot like once a year in the month of July, because in California we typically have to irrigate our fruit. Here in Italy, they have rain in the summertime, so they get plenty.
They don't irrigate here. To have a DOCG label in Italy, they cannot irrigate.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, I think one of the things that comes from that vineyard is the amount of minerals that flow down the American River and is picked up and deposited in that vineyard. And so I think that really gives it some of the characteristics that it has. And then, of course, the soils of El Dorado County are they're all over the place. You got volcanic soils, sedimentary soils,
sandy loam.
Yeah,
it all.
We got just a variety just because of the uplift that the foothills have. So you get these striations of different geology that go throughout the county, and I think that's why we have such spectacular vineyards in the county.
Well, excellent. So you've talked some about the vineyard, and the context of El Dorado County. The Sierra foothills in Amador County next door, and the whole area is really emerging as a spotlight California wine region. So what do you think's next for Sierra foothills and what you guys are doing there?
Yeah, it's interesting because we still have people coming up to our winery that don't realize that there's wine up there, and they're astounded that when they come up there, they're getting some great wines, and they're just kicking themselves that they haven't visited us before, or anybody up there for that matter. But I think we are getting on the map. We have a winery association that's trying to do just that, put us on the map, and then our wines are getting noticed more and more by, like we send some of our wines to Wine Enthusiast, and we've had some really good reviews. But being in a major international magazine like that, I think is also putting us on the map. We've had some wines that have, gotten in the low 90s point wise. So we think we're doing a pretty good job. But yeah, the other thing about El Dorado County is just the variety of fruit that's grown there. Ourselves, we're actually going to be, our new place, we're on a vineyard that grows 11 and 12 acres. And we're going to be harvesting 3 new varietals, as well as our Nebbiolo. Our Nebbiolo, we've been getting there since 2016. But the guy that owns the place, he also grows Negro Amaro, Lagrine, and we're going to be planting 2 new white varietals, from Italian white varietals called Malvasia and Verdicchio.
I'm really excited about those.
Excellent. So you just alluded to that your new place. So obviously my wife and I visited your old place multiple times, but we haven't had a chance to get across country to your new place yet. Hopefully that's going to be on our travel agenda for next year. But what led you to move from the place you had to this new place? Leanne, you want to take that?
Sure. So our old place, we found very hard to find commercial property up in our area that is big enough to hold the kind of winery that we had. So when we found what we had, we really loved it. And then the Caltrans started doing some road work that took about 3 years. and was very loud and right in front of our business. And in the process of doing that, they put up a center divide that now like sends noise back to us when we were there. And it was just wasn't conducive to what we wanted for people who were relaxing and drinking our wines. And where we get our Nebbiolo from is a vineyard and big facility. And we knew the owners and they were just ready to rent their place out to a winery. And they came to us and asked if we wanted to move there. And we were thrilled. So we went over, saw the space that was available, and we took it. So we have this gorgeous view of the vineyard. We have a view of some foothills further in the distance, and we have no road noise, which is fantastic. It's just really a nice space.
That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. I saw the pictures that you guys had posted, and the views do look spectacular. And I'm eager to be there and have some more of your pizza on the patio with the Sangiovese.
Yes.
How about that? So
Yes,
speaking of the Sangiovese, I mean, we highlighted that today, but you have a portfolio of rosés and whites and white blends and red blends and other reds. So I know asking this of a winemaker may be asking like, what's your favorite child? But John, what's a couple of other wines from your portfolio that you would like for our listeners to know about after we've promoted your Sangiovese? What else is there? What do you want to what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, it is interesting. We do obviously have our single varietal Sangiovese wines. We also blend Sangiovese in a few of our blends. We have a Super Tuscan we call Papa Romano, named after Leanne's dad. That is what would be typically a true Super Tuscan Sangiovese and a couple of Bordeaux varietals. But as far as our other, I mean, we get Aglianico. As far as the red wines, we get Barbera. We have Dolcetto. We have Primitivo. And then for our white varietals, we always have Pinot Grigio with Vermentino.
My favorite.
Yeah, that's her favorite.
I think that's my favorite of your whites is the Vermentino.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Delicious.
And we're actually going to be bottling a new one in August called Ribolla Giallo. We harvested that a few years ago. We did have an orange wine version of the Ribolla Giallo we bottled back in February, which is turning out really nicely. Then we have, of course, we have like I said, the Pinot Grigio, and then we have a white blend. But we have probably, I'd say 5 different blends, probably 8 to 10 reds, and then 5 or 6 whites that we have, plus our 2 rosés. Our rosé is Sangiovese, which comes from the same vineyard as our regular Sangiovese. And then we also do a Barbera rosé, which comes from the place where we get our regular red Barbera. And then we also get Dolcetto and next year Nera d'Avola from that vineyard.
We also have a Primitivo rosé this year because we couldn't get the Sangiovese last year.
Yes.
Because of the frost.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, we've had
wow.
a hard couple of years. We had fire 2 years ago and then frost really bad last year. So our selections that we normally get have been difficult to come by.
The Primitivo rosé is delicious, though. We're now probably going to keep it on the list of things to make because it is really, really good.
Excellent. Well, my wife is certainly a fan of your rosés. I think we knocked down a couple of bottles of that when we were in California last summer. So that'll be great.
It's a great summertime rosé. It really is.
Excellent.
We have a new blend called what is it?
Bella Vita?
La Bella Vita, which means the beautiful life. And it is so delectable. Everyone who's tried it has just said that it is one of their favorites now. And John can tell you what's in it. Yeah,
it's a blend of 4 different wines. We have Grenache in that, and then we have Barbera, Dolcetto, and Sangiovese. And it's really a nice fruit forward wine. It's actually one of those wines I think that could be chilled down a bit and be drunk in the summertime. It's just that good.
Well, I'm going to tell you that that came in one of my club shipments recently from you guys.
Oh,
yeah, good. And I did just that. I chilled it down a little bit, had it with some grilled salmon,
Perfect.
It was an excellent start to the summer season. Yes, that was part of my Via Romano experience this
Oh,
year,
good.
right?
That's awesome. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate both John and Leanne joining us today for Wines We Drink. And please enjoy the rest of your travels in Italy. And until we see you in person, ciao.
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 Ciao, ciao.
Thanks.
Wow, Keith, what a treat to hear from a couple who loves to make wine for other people like us to enjoy.
Well, it takes a lot of passion for wine to accomplish what John and Leanne have done in such a relatively short amount of time, really. We certainly thank them for interrupting their travels in Italy to join the show.
That is crazy. I mean, amazing. And another fantastic finish for Wines We Drink. And that sets us up nicely for next week's episode featuring another special guest on the finish, right?
Charlotte, yes, I don't want to give too much away, but our guest next week introduced me to a wonderful bottle of Carmenere, a varietal that's now coming into the spotlight, right? But it was one that was misidentified for years.
Oh, okay. Some more mysteries to unravel on Wines We Drink. I'm sensing a theme with that.
Right. Yes, and before we go today, let's remind everyone that we'll be back on location for the last 3 episodes of this season. We'll be back in our home away from home at the Tapped Athens Wine Tasting Market.
Wow, I guess this means goodbye to your wine kitchen for now then, but I'm always eager to visit Tapped. So until next week, everyone.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Twitter @WinesWeDrink and on Instagram @TheWinesWeDrink. Cheers.